So, hello everyone, and welcome back to another of the Keats-Shelley Association of America's online interviews, and our first for 2022, I do believe. I'm Amy Wilcoxon, a PhD researcher at the University of Nottingham, and I'm one of the Keats-Shelley Association of America Communications Fellows for 2021 and 2022. And it's part of my role as a comms fellow to provide exciting and engaging digital content for you. So hopefully that's just what today's interview will provide. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome today one of Romantic Studies' brightest stars, a wonderful early career scholar who is focusing on creating fresh and innovative perspectives of Percy Shelley and his poetry. So I'm really excited to be joined today by Dr. Amanda Blake Davis, and I'm just going to read you her bio so you all know how wonderful she is. So Amanda is a postdoctoral research fellow in English literature at the University of Derby, and also an honorary research fellow in the School of English at the University of Sheffield, where she was awarded her PhD in 2020. And excitingly, she's currently preparing her first monograph, Shelley and Androgyny. Her postdoctoral project at the University of Derby explores drawings of trees and other botanical figures in Percy Bysshe Shelley's manuscripts through what she terms the poet's intermedial ecology, which sounds fascinating. I'm sure we'll be hearing a bit more about that later. Since 2019, Amanda has served on the executive of the British Association for Romantic Studies as a postgrad representative, and she's also very well published in articles such as the Keats-Shelley Review, English Journal of the English Association, and Romanticism on the Net. And her amazing article, Ephemeral Are Gay Gulps of Laughter, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Louis MacNeice and the Ambivalence of Laughter, won the 2020 English Association Essay Prize. And excitingly, Amanda also has links to the Keats-Shelley Association of America, as she is a past communications fellow, and she took on this role from 2018 to 2019. And thanks so much, Amanda, for taking part in this interview. It's so exciting to chat to you today. I'm looking forward to diving into discussion. So we are here today to talk about the series of ongoing events that are taking place online and in person under the kind of banner Shelley 200. So my first question for you is, can you tell us what Shelley 200 actually is, and why did you and your colleagues decide to initiate Shelley 200?
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. Thanks so much for that lovely introduction and for having me. Thanks to the Keats-Shelley Association of America as well. I'm thrilled to be here and to talk to you about Shelley 200. So we started off thinking about Shelley 200 as just a Shelley conference, so a traditional 1-2-day conference to mark the bicentenary of Percy Bysshe Shelley's death on 8th July 1822. So coming up this summer, excitingly. But so we started thinking about planning this conference in 2019. And then when COVID hit, everything changed. And so we began sort of thinking of contingency plans, putting contingency plans in place. Would we have to move the conference online? And that's really where this Shelley 200 series of online events emerged from. So it's broadened it out beyond being just a 2-day conference, traditional 2-day in-person conference, to being this year-long online program of events, which has been really wonderful. So as a whole, Shelley 200 celebrates the final years, months, and days of Shelley's life ahead of this momentous bicentenary on 8th July. So we couldn't let such a momentous event go to pass without some sort of commemoration. So it's been a wonderful time to be a Shelleyan. I started my PhD in 2016. And then Anna Mercer and Harry Neal held the 2017 Shelley Conference in London. So I attended that. That was one of my very first conferences, which was amazing. So to be a part of this 2022 Shelley Conference has been fantastic. Yeah, so that's the origin story of the Shelley 200.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Who else is involved in the organising? I know there's a couple of you who are organising all the conference and events.
Yeah, so Anna Mercer, who you'll know very well, is the lead organizer of the Shelley Conference. So she co-organized the 2017 conference with Harry Neal. And then she's leading on this conference along with myself, Bish Coffey, and Paul Stevens. So we're the core organizational team. And we've got 2 really fantastic postgraduate helpers who volunteered their time to help out. That's Anna Romanelli and Laura Blunsden. And then we have an advisory board for all the conference programs, again, just volunteers. So Kelvin Everest, Madeline Callahan, Will Bowers, and Sharon Ruston.
Amazing. Such a who's who of Shelley studies at the minute, I think. All the big names. Yeah, so you've kind of touched on this already, but I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about what events kind of are making up the Shelley 200 celebration. So you've mentioned online events and also the conference. So can you tell us first a little bit about the online events that are happening at the moment?
Yeah, so the first online event was nearly a year ago now, which seems like shocking. So that happened in May last year, and Bish led that event. So it was an online roundtable on epipsychidion, which had its bicentenary publication last year, May 2021. Yeah. So Bish kicked that off and gathered a really fantastic group of Shelley scholars. So we had Stuart Curran, Michael Rossington, Valentina Veronelli, and Will Bowers, all discussing epipsychidion and how can we interpret this poem today, what's its critical legacy. So that really kicked off this series, and we had a really large group of attendees, online attendees. These events are all free and online, live streamed on Zoom. So it had great reception, so we kept things going. Last August, we celebrated Percy's birthday with a revolutionary Shelley roundtable. So that was a bit more free form, bit more relaxed sort of event. And that featured Julie Camarda, Graham Henderson, Jacqueline Mulholland, and Michael Scrivener. So again, these greats of Shelley scholarship joining us online from around the world to discuss Shelley. This past November, Paul Stevens led a roundtable on Shelleyan fragments. So looking at all manner of fragments, from intentional fragments that Shelley left behind to unintentional fragments. I suppose the most famous core one is The Triumph of Life, Shelley's last work. That was it left unfinished? Was it not left unfinished? Who's going to say? So we had Carleen Adamson, Nora Crook, Madelinda Nabugodi, and Alan Weinberg, this amazing lineup of Shelley editors and scholars discussing all manner of fragments. And then our most recent roundtable I organized, and that was in January, so just earlier this year, and that was on Shelley's Jane poems. So the sequence of lyrics to Jane Williams, some of Shelley's last lyrics. And that featured Madeline Callahan, Kelvin Everest, William Keats, and Marilise Roberts. So we've been really just honored to have these lineups of Shelley scholars join us from around the world and discuss, Shelley's greatest works to most unknown works, I suppose.
Yeah.
So the next round is taking place on May 5th, and that's on the topic of Shelley and travel. Seems quite appropriate as the world's kind of opening up to traveling again. Nahoko Miyamoto Alvey, Benjamin Colbert, Kian Duffy, and our own Anna Mercer, speaking about both the Shelley's travels.
Amazing. They sound like such good events, and we'll put a link on the blog and underneath this video to that next roundtable that's taking place too. So can you tell us now a little bit about the Shelley Conference and what are your hopes for the event?
Yeah, so the Shelley Conference, it's going to be a 2-day conference taking place from 8th to 9th July. It's being held at Keats House in Hampstead, North London, and we're really grateful to Keats House for hosting us for this event. So by the Keats House, it's a small Regency villa, so it'll be a quite intimate conference, not a massive sprawling conference venue. And so we're looking forward to just gathering a group of Shelley scholars and admirers to mark this really momentous bicentenary. So I suppose the conference is going to be fairly traditional in structure. So we have paper panels. Our call for papers closed quite recently, but there's a Byron panel. The call is still open for that at the moment, so do check that out on our website. So paper panels, 2 keynotes by Professor Nora Crook and Professor Michael Rossington. So 2 of our leading Shelley editors. We're really honored to have them speaking with us. And the lectures are going to commemorate 2 greats who we lost recently, so Charles E. Robinson and Michael O'Neill. So they'll be with us in spirit, I suppose, through these lectures. There will be wine receptions and conference lunches, a conference dinner, the classical going on there.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. It sounds like a really good conference and lovely to commemorate some of the scholars that we've lost recently as well. Yeah, it sounds really, really great. So you mentioned Keats House really briefly there as kind of the host for the conference. Are there any other sort of individuals or organisations who are involved in the Shelley 200 celebrations who we should know about?
Yeah, so Keats House are hosting us, and we're grateful to Rob Shakespeare, who's the curator there, and his team. They've put some treasures, Shelley treasures, on display for us during the conference, including Shelley's inkstand that he used to compose Queen Mab. So that'll be quite a treat for our guests and delegates to be able to wander around and look at these artifacts and treasures. We've also got the Byron Society are sponsoring a panel and a wine reception at the conference, so we're grateful to them. BARS, the British Association of Romantic Studies, have sponsored a postgraduate bursary for the conference. So we're grateful to them as well. And then beyond that, we've got a Keats House talk will be taking place on July 7th with Professor Omar Miranda. He is one of the editors of the Shelley 4-Hour Times volume, forthcoming with Cambridge University Press. So there will be a panel about that at the conference, and then he'll also be giving a lecture before the conference begins, kind of kickoff proceedings. And then we've got some events happening at the Keats-Shelley house in Rome with Giuseppe Albano there, organizing some poetry readings and other collaborative events. So Shelley 200, I mean, we're really open to collaborating. So if anyone else wants to get in touch, wants to run something collaborative, do email us, do get in touch on social media, and we'd love to put something together.
That's amazing. And yeah, hopefully loads of people will watch this and also want to come along and get involved. I mean, you've just touched, you're anticipating all my questions wonderfully. You've just touched on this briefly, but how do you think the Shelley 200 celebrations are kind of showing or giving us unconventional or kind of alternative approaches to Shelley and Shelley studies? I mean, you mentioned these connections with historic places. So how do you think, how the celebration is going to do this, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite fun because the conference itself is fairly traditional in format. I mean, keynote speakers, panels, it'll be in person with the conference lunch and dinner. So in that aspect, it's quite conventional. The unconventional aspect, I suppose, has been the Shelley 200 program, the online program that we've kind of added on to supplement the conference in a way. And it's something that's just developed and grown beyond what we'd expected originally, with this Epipsychidian event growing to this entire program. So in that way, it is quite unconventional and alternative approach to conferencing, I guess. It's something that we've learned as a result of the pandemic and the climate crisis. How can we bring academics together without making these environmental compromises or health compromises? So hosting people from all around the world online, having these academic discussions, it's been a great alternative to just gathering in a room, but we do miss that aspect as well. So we're kind of hoping for the best of both worlds in the Shelley 200 program and the Shelley Conference, tying those together.
Yeah, amazing. No, I completely agree. The environmental aspect is such a big thing at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, which again, I guess ties into your research. So Amanda, tell us, how does your research tie into Percy Shelley and into the Shelley 200 celebrations?
Yeah, so I suppose with the Shelley 200 events, this most recent Shelley 200 roundtable we had on the Jane poems, it was a bit selfish of me, I guess, to organize this Jane poems roundtable, because there are a series of lyrics that absolutely fascinate me and that are very much centered around trees, pine forests especially. Mm-hmm. So at the conference, I will be speaking a bit about these Jane poems and how central pine trees are to them, looking at Mary Wollstonecraft as well in her travels in Scandinavia, and how prominent pine trees are in those letters, and how they affect Shelley and his thinking and the appearance of pines throughout the Jane poem sequence. So yeah, my research will tie in there. And also be speaking a bit about a fragment that I've been kind of obsessed with over the past couple of years called The Woodman and the Nightingale. It's one that Nora Crook's recently written about in the most recent Johns Hopkins edition of Shelley. So hopefully she'll incorporate that into her keynote lecture during the conference. But it's in this fragment, The Woodman and the Nightingale. There's a line, one nightingale in an interfluous wood, And it's this word interfluous that I keep coming back to. I've been returning to in various talks over the past couple of years, because it's received different glosses from different Shelley editors. It's a very Shelleyan word, and in the OED, the Woodman and the Nightingale is the source of this word in the OED. Yeah. So I'm quite partial to C.D. Lowcock's reading of this word as meaning intersected by paths or streams, interfluous, which seems to me to be very elusive. I mean, it's a very elusive fragment. Alludes strongly to Keats. Neville Rogers read it as a Keats allegory, this woodman slaying Keats the Nightingale. But there's so many others who appear, who Shelley references to in this fragment, including Wordsworth and Coleridge by virtue of his Nightingale. So it's a line and a fragment that have very much informed my current project on Shelley and trees, and thinking about intersectionality, intersections, allusions, and root systems. I'm really captivated by at the moment.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a bit about your monograph that you're preparing at the moment? I'm really interested to hear about that while we're on the topic of your research.
Yeah, so my monograph, it's developed out of my PhD thesis, which was on Shelley and androgyny. So I kind of took Plato as the central influence, and especially Plato's Symposium as the central influence on Shelley. I mean, that's not innovative in itself. It's been kind of widely acknowledged that the Symposium had this transformative impact upon Shelley. Translating Plato's Symposium completely revolutionized the way Shelley thought about love, and love as this sort of empathic force, empathic connection between others. And so I've broadened out this concept of androgyny from the Symposium to encompass a connection between poet and reader, which in many ways builds upon Ross Wilson's amazing work on interanimation, or the way that a poet becomes more alive through this transaction with the reader, and the way it's reciprocal. The reader becomes more enlivened through the poetry. So that was really the starting point for my thesis and for this monograph.
That's amazing. That's incredible. We're looking forward, I'm sure, all to reading that and your current work very soon, hopefully. So kind of back to the Shelley 200 celebrations, I guess. So when all the celebrations, when this bicentennial year has come to an end, what do you think is next for studies of Percy Shelley, and perhaps for Romanticism in general? I mean, that's quite a big question, but I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What comes next? It's a very Shelleyan question, looking forward to the future. Yeah. So I've mentioned this Shelley for Our Times volume that's being edited by Omar Miranda and Kate Singer with Cambridge University Press. So that'll be coming out fairly soon, and it will offer a range of really innovative, forward-thinking approaches to Shelley's poetry, as the title implies, Shelley for Our Times now. There are also numerous other collections and special issues on Shelley coming out that include new approaches, new readings of major and minor or neglected works, forthcoming in the near future. And then we've got the ongoing Johns Hopkins editions of Shelley's poetry to look forward to. And one really exciting Shelley project that one of our conference advisors, Will Bowers, is working on is a new edition of Shelley's letters, which is really much needed, much anticipated. Yeah, so there's so much to look forward to as a Shelleyan. It's a great time to be studying Shelley.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm feeling quite jealous of all the Shelley scholars out there. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing any future Shelley letters, because I obviously study letters, so that'll be an amazing resource for everybody, I think, to have a look at too. Oh, Amanda, this is a really hard question now, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it. But I wanted to know, as one of my final questions, what is your favourite Shelley poem?
It's such a difficult question to answer, especially as a Shelleyan. There's something kind of fixed about a favorite that doesn't really fit in with Shelleyan philosophy. Yeah, let me think. I mean, I suppose it depends what I'm working on at the moment. Whatever I'm working on at the moment is my favorite Shelley poem. That's what I become completely invested in. So thinking about that, I guess The Woodman and the Nightingale is my favorite at this moment. It's one I keep returning to, that I'm just fascinated by. I mean, Nora Crook, in her recent editing of it, has has made the point that it kind of anticipates the triumph of life in its terzarima form, which I hadn't thought that much about before, this connection between the two. And then it also looks to Adonais, of course, in drawing up Keats as this Keatsian nightingale. But I guess the first Shelley poem that was my favorite, that really captured me, was Ode to the West Wind. So I first read Ode to the West Wind quite late in life. I think I was 19 or 20, undergraduate student on a year abroad at University College Oxford, of all places, introduced to Shelley. And at that time I was working on a creative writing degree. So just this idea of the poet and this oracular breath, poetry as this oracular production and fire and sparks, just completely captivated me. And that's when I became a Shelleyan, I suppose. But thinking about Ode to the West Wind and how it appears in Shelley's Leon and Cythna. So in Canto 9 of Leon and Cythna, Cythna kind of mouths the intimations of this ode. This is where it originates in one of Shelley's most fantastic female figures, and her voice just fascinates me. And Leon and Cythna was the first poem that I began my PhD with. It was really my focus, so much so that my supervisor told me, you have to get over Leon and Cythna. Everything cannot be about Leon and Cythna. But it's kind of an underappreciated Shelley poem, I think, still. But it's one where he's so experimental in this kind of Wordsworthian lyrical ballad sense. You can see him really testing and experimenting. And it's in conversation with Keats as well, of course. Keats composing Endymion in competition with Leon and Cythna. So it's a poem that has these connections to other writers and that intimates Shelley's future works in such a way that, yeah, I suppose if I had to choose a favorite, I'd say Leon and Cythna.
I love that. We've progressed through. I need to go and give it a reread. I think
too early.
Yeah, I enjoyed the tour. No, I think I agree with you. You know, as you read different things, your favorite changes, doesn't it? And that was probably an incredibly mean question for me to have asked you last off, I think. I'm definitely going to have to go and give Leon and Cythna a reread in light of your comments just then. So yeah, thank you so much, Amanda, for today's interview. Really quickly, where can we find out more about Shelley 200?
Yes,
have you got
please
social media?
theshelleyconference.com. It's easy to remember, theshelleyconference.com. We've got all of our recordings of our past events, so all of our interviews with our advisory board that our amazing PG helpers have done are there. All of the recordings of our Shelley 200 roundtables are there. Future roundtable recordings will go there. And you can pick up tickets for our next Shelley 200 roundtable on May 5th on Shelley and Travel on our website as well. We've got links to our social media pages there. So we've got a Facebook, a Twitter, and our PG helpers have a Shelley 200 Instagram account as well that you can follow.
Amazing. And just to note also, I'll add any links to these social media pages and the website and things like that on the Keats-Shelley Association of America blog underneath this video. And so people will be able to check those out very quickly and easily. And yeah, all that's left to say is thank you so much, Amanda, for your time today and for telling us all about your research and the amazing Shelley 200 events that are in store this year. I'm so excited to attend them and come along and hear what everybody's got to say. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Amy.